Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of together and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. I am here today with the beautiful and brilliant Coco Sellman. Coco, you are quite prolific over these last 25 years, building, advising over 500 startups, launching 5 companies, going through an exit, being the founder and CEO of a force for good, having an incredible book that catalyzes change and is looking for business to step up and change the world. Your work as an LP, investing in founders, creating true change in this world, I think is so exemplary. I'm just so honored to have you here today on Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's such an honor. I just love being in your presence, and it's just a treat to have a chance to connect.
If anyone looked at your LinkedIn profile, they would just see what a flipping badass you are and all of the incredible things. I am sure there is a little girl inside of you that is high-fiving the hell out of everything that you have done and accomplished. And while we will get to all those things you've accomplished, I'd love to start with that little girl somewhere between 7 and 12 years old, the one that is so deeply proud of you today. Where was she? What was life like around you? And what was money like?
Oh boy. Okay. I was a little girl. I had long, curly, brown hair, and I grew up in a little town in Council Bluffs, Iowa, which was literally at the end of the railroad. It railroad for many years. And so it's a other side of the tracks sort of town. It was my high school where I grew up. Very blue collar kind of place. Not as many people go to college. I grew up in an environment like this. I was a creative, always had a project, always working on something kid. I grew up in this environment that was not really, I didn't care about sports or football, and the Huskers meant nothing to me. Buckeyes, I didn't care. I was focused on building things. I was building games. I was building plays. I was building businesses and creating machines where you put money in and you get out a fortune. And, you know, I was just always building things. I had my mother and father. I was born in Tucson, Arizona. I was a little baby. We lived in the middle of the desert with other family members. It was hippies. Okay. So my parents divorced and we moved to Iowa. My mother had family and my mom was a single mom. We got a lot of help from the grandparents, from Grandma Zelma. My mom worked nights. She was a waitress. When I was about 6 or 7, she went back to school and got a degree in accounting. She thought that would create more stability in our lives. We didn't have much, but I never felt that way. We had food stamps and I thought they were cool. I didn't know that they meant we didn't have enough money for food, but I always felt like I had plenty.
I love that. And also, what an experience to see your mother applying herself as a little girl, to see her going back out there. Do you have any memories of experiencing her as she's experiencing herself, I guess? Was it fun for her? What was it like to see and experience your mom going back to school?
I saw her working so hard. It was hard. I think I always adored my mother. She's a beautiful, kind, loving, and wise woman. So I always looked up to her. Everything she did just made sense. Loved the restaurant that she worked in, the 64 Club Steakhouse. Like, I loved it. And that I would go to class with her when I was around and she needed something from me, I would come.
Wow.
And so I just felt like my mother was a person who works hard and does good things in the world. And that's what I believed. And it took me till my adulthood to really respect, deeply understand the level of consequence that she must have had, because she did put me first. And I really did have no experience of the hardships that she did financially. I was aware that we didn't have a lot of money, but I didn't ask her for much. I also had the things I wanted and needed. She's still a wonderful mother and still lives in Iowa and rides her horses. She's a CFO of a health center. And so she's still doing her thing.
Oh, go mom. That's so great. You mentioned being in this building mode, and I could have sworn by doing all this building that you would have just become this engineer, building games, building all sorts of things. What an engineer's mindset, and also entrepreneurial mindset. Certainly some of both. As you were going through high school and starting to really understand yourself, I feel like high school is these great places where, you start to get new ideas and you start testing boundaries, maybe getting a part-time job or doubling down on studies. How did you navigate your high school years, and what did you think at that time you were going to become when you grew up?
High school time was like, I was a very academic kid and I did very well in school. My teachers always said, you're very smart in math and science. You should go into math or science. In my mind, if I wanted out of this blue collar world I was in, I could be an accountant like my mom, or I could be a doctor or a lawyer. Everything else was like, I looked around and I went, the other options that I could see look not as good as I would like. I want a safer life. That's what money was for me. It was safety. I worked so hard. I can't even begin to tell you. I studied like my life depended on it because I knew that I couldn't go to the schools I wanted to unless I had a scholarship. So I studied like my life depended on it. And I had a teacher, Mr. Forsey, who was, I had him in my 10th, 11th, 12th grade years for different science classes. And he helped me get into a couple of programs in the summers to build my resume, if you will, so that I was able to go on and get into good schools, and I got a full scholarship. I look back at that and I thought I would be a doctor, and that's what I was going to do. And I went through college. I studied biochemistry and never thought of anything else. I really believed that if I went off course for a second, something would fall apart and I would not make it. So I just kept going. I have grit and determination. We know this. And so but it was really until I graduated from college that I even thought I might want to do something other than be a doctor.
It's so clear that the sense of self-responsibility was so strong. If it's going to be, it's up to me. I can feel that. And also this idea of I cannot explore outside out of fear that exploration will abandon me and my sense of safety.
It took me many years to let that go. It's still something I work on to this day. I had to really learn there's a way to create and manifest in the world and to succeed without it coming from a place of fear, without it being because I feel like I have a tiger running at my back. I can do the thing I desire because I desire it. I can move towards the thing I love and cherish and wish for. I don't have to be running from something to stay on path.
I remember during critical moments of my life where I so understood what I was rejecting in my life, but I needed to carve out what I was running towards, because rejecting something doesn't actually tell you what the thing is that you want. It tells you what you don't want, and then you need to figure out what the opposite of that is, and then that's the thing you want and the thing that you run towards. It's a really interesting process. As you were coming out of university, how did you then start to decide, I've done all this education, and then there's this moment where you decide, okay, now what's next, and how am I going to actually export myself into the world, given all the work I've done, but also all that you know yourself to be? What happened?
Well, I left college and figured I would take a year off and study for the MCATs and apply to medical school. I took a job with a biotechnology company and I started out in a technical role. I was working with industrial enzymes that will clean your fabric better. And then I quickly got moved from a technical role to more of a customer-facing role. And it was the first time I'd ever done anything in business. Suddenly I was in business conversations, business rooms, and I was being invited to play. I was loving it. I was good at it. It was super fun. It was the first time I ever really realized how hard science was for me. I was like, oh my God, what was I ever doing? This is so much more fun and so easy. And it's like the most natural thing for me. Like, how did I do this all these years? It was a joyful discovery, and I was rewarded with opportunities and responsibility. And I ended up staying in biotech for a couple of years and then realizing I didn't even want to stay in biotechnology and didn't want to get pegged there. And I didn't know how, I was like, I should have gone to business school. If I was me now, that's what I would have done. But I had college friends who'd gone off to the Accentures of the world at the time, Arthur Andersen and, PricewaterhouseCoopers. So I got a job with Arthur Andersen and became more of a generalist in business. And they put you through the whole training program and learn about people, process, and technology and change. And that's where my business adventure really started.
Are there any things from your science days that stick with you?
I love numbers and analytics and making a hypothesis. I like testing things. I have a statement that I make often, which is growth is a puzzle you can solve. I approach it very scientifically. What do I need to know? What do I need to change? And then what do I need to do in order to make that puzzle unravel and solve? I approach problems like a scientist. I test like a scientist. I think that way, right? I'm always thinking in that sort of structured way.
Oh, I love that. So obviously getting a job in consulting as a young woman, and certainly in an era where I bet there were not a lot of women who were taking up these consulting roles. What sort of experiences did you have, certainly around understanding things like my starting salary here, or was it I'm learning how to negotiate, or I'm taking this on as a first learning step to further my education in something? How conscious were you as you're now developing this business career as far as learning and balancing, let's say, the paying for stuff side of things? Because certainly living is not cheap.
Yeah. I had a funny thing happen. One of my early consulting jobs, it was after Arthur Andersen. I worked for a smaller boutique firm. I'd been there for maybe 6 or 9 months. And they had a outside consultant come in and do an analysis of all the salaries and make sure that everybody was equalized. And I got a $20,000 raise in the process.
Oh my God. Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah, and I was like, oh my God, I've been underpaid all this time. And it changed my perspective. So then every single time after that, I learned how to ask for money and raises and get what I deserved. It took that unbelievable moment of like, I didn't have a clue that I was underpaid, but I was underpaid pretty significantly at that time in my life. $20 was a lot of money for me at the time. It was kind of grotesque, but it was a wonderful learning experience. I think that asking for money is something that I'll always have to remind myself to straighten my back with. I'd like to think that one day I'll be very good at it and I won't have to straighten my back, that it'll be natural and I won't feel any sense of like softening in my stomach where I want to curl up. But I always have to straighten my back. But I also know that I can.
It's so interesting that you got to have this experience so young in your life, to know that you deserved more. Had you found at that time any of your friends, were you able to share that experience, allowed you to also impact maybe some of the other women that you knew? Because it's so powerful to be a young person and go, oh shit, this is a totally different game that forever alters your course.
Yeah, it has played a very big role in how I mentor others, for sure. I've always talk to other women about the importance of asking for what you want, asking for what you need. I've even coached employees to ask for what they need. My desire, I always used to say at Illume, my healthcare company, was that everybody who worked with my company had a better life after having worked with it. It didn't work if I was cheap with them. It didn't work if I wasn't giving my best guidance. I could still say no. I could still say you can't have more from me, but I could say this is what I could afford, that you should ask for more.
Yeah, I love that. That's so powerful. And so at this young age, as you're awakening around salaries, starting to think about paying for things and getting yourself on the right track, did you find with your early paychecks, were you very bucketed? Like, all right, sign up for the savings. Was there money left over at the end of the day? How did you start to think about where the money goes? What was the guidance around you about how to spend it, save it, etc.?
Well, I was a bit of a mess because I was told that you were supposed to put 15% into your 401k. And so I did that. But I ran out of money like every single paycheck. So I probably now would have advised myself to not try to save quite so aggressively, but I had it in my head that this is what you had to do. At the same time, I did that, but then I would go out and have fun and spend all my money and think about it later, right? So I lived paycheck to paycheck for a very long time. It took me a very long time to discover how to not run out of money. It was that scarcity that I kept having to repeat, even until I was 30. I was really on that cycle of spending everything that I had. I put money away, but then I spent everything I had. And it was that uncertainty, that feeling of uncertainty and fear if something were to come up. I didn't have those buckets of short-term savings because I wanted to one day buy a house or something. I didn't have that in my late 20s. I was still starting businesses too. That was the other thing. I did all the things when I started businesses that you do that later a lot of people regret. I charged my credit cards through the roof. I had to deal with credit card debt at different points. It wasn't until I was in my mid-30s that I really started to find a place of prosperity and really figuring out how to hold on to the money I was creating. It was more about worthiness. I was spending because I thought I could feel enough, and then I would reiterate to myself that I needed more by spending it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like how, there's so many questions working and then starting businesses, right? This is not easy. This means that you have a 9 to 5, a 5 to 9, and very little time between sideways, above and below. What a gift to be a visionary, and also what a curse to feel such a sense of responsibility to your ideas and to the model of needing to have the job and make it all work. How did you reconcile the duality between entrepreneurship and working, and what was that balance like for you, both from a financial side, talk about needing to spend money for yourself, but then also businesses cost money and you can't get out of it. And so there's a personal toll that this takes, and then also sort of a psychological creating all these systems for yourself. How did you reconcile all of this at a young age?
Yeah, I worked really, really hard. I had no balance. I worked around the clock for a big chunk of time in my 20s. When I started my first business, I was working full time. I did that for 3 or 4 years. Then I finally got to a point where I was able to leave and go off on my own. I had enough revenues that I could start to do that. It was hard. And at the same time, it was really, really hard. I worked as hard as I could. I looked for mentors all over the place. I looked for examples of people building businesses and how they were doing it, how they were scaling, how they were marketing, how they were closing clients. And that's what I did. I learned how to do that efficiently. I come from the place of you don't do 10,000 things, you do 4 things 10,000 times, right? You have all those meetings, follow up from all those meetings, and then have the next meeting. You just have your system for getting new prospects, turning those prospects into employees, and then making them into long-term loyal customers. That's how I did it. And I learned over the years how much to charge. That first business that I left my job for was a consulting type of business. I was charging by project and by the hour and working with other 1099s. And figuring out how much to charge is really hard, because I think most people, when they start, undercharge. You feel like, oh, I'm going to charge less and I'll get more people. It'll be better. I learned for myself that then I'm working, and I still am like running so fast that I'm not making the prosperity. So I learned to value my time more. I mean, that's kind of a transformation that happened in my 30s. Wow. And how to sort of value your time. And then I got to a place where I was like, I know that I don't want to have it anymore where I am the product. I want to leverage my knowledge and networks and create businesses that have others either providing service or other products that you're selling. I went through a journey in my 30s around that. It was a time of transforming the emotional inner stuff that was telling me I wasn't enough and wasn't worthy early in my life, setting myself free at the same time. Before we started the podcast today, we were talking about Esther and Jerry Hicks. You know, we were talking about Ask and It Is Given. We were talking about that kind of work. And I was doing a lot of that work at that time. And it really changed the way I saw myself, my value. It shifted where I was coming from to focus on where I wanted to go.
That's incredible, Coco. You know, this feeling moving from these different layers of security. You go from getting paid from someone, which is a great sense of security, to saying, okay, I'm going to bet on myself as my own sense of security. And then to take the next level and say, okay, I'm now going to be providing security for other people and myself. Those are like really big milestone shifts. It's like you're building yourself along the way as your entrepreneurial journey continues to expand.
I 100% believe that being a founder is the best way to grow, because it just gets right to you. Well, and then, you know, my healthcare company, here I had like 300 nurses, mothers who depended on my company for a job, and about the same number of medically complex children with vents and trachs in hospital beds in their homes. Those were the people I was taking care of and making sure the company could sustain and had what it needed to run. It's finding that level of strength and security from a place that started out believing I was always going to be poor and never worthy. I was thinking too big for myself.
Let's talk a little bit about some financial milestones or moments that really shifted some perspectives, right? So obviously becoming a consultant and leaving, that's a big shift. It's like, okay, no one's paying for my health insurance anymore. And, you know, there are these levels that really help you. I mean, it scales the way you think about yourself in this world. As you were starting continuous businesses and sort of navigating this world, what were some of the key moments that had you stop and go, okay, now my financial life is different in this way. I can make different decisions. Like, when did you start to think differently about the money you were making?
Well, I think that certainly as I was in my consulting business, it was at a point where I was training enough people. I had enough volume. I feel like there's a moment where you think about revenue and there's a moment where you about profit. When you're an entrepreneur, first you think about the revenue. You're just thinking, oh, okay, I'll get to the 100K, I'll get to the 500K, I'll get to the million. If you don't really pay attention to what the end of the day number is, you can also do some pretty fuzzy math. You're like, well, part of my apartment, my phone bill, and when I travel and eat, I put it all under my business expenses. So you sort of had this fuzzy experience, I think, early on. It wasn't until, I think it was probably when I was about 34, 35, I was making enough money that I really needed to understand the profitability because it didn't feel like I was prosperous. And that's also when I made the decision that I didn't want to be the service or the product anymore. I was looking around and I was seeing other entrepreneurs doing things that I was interested in, just different kinds of businesses. That gave me the idea to do it that way. Home health was something that I came into because I have a medically fragile stepdaughter. And so when I got married and met Amelia, that transformed my life. Seeing her experience transformed my life. Then I started to see, okay, I can take some money here and put it into starting this business. That was a business you really had to invest in. You couldn't just run and sell and kind of get everything to services you could do that more with than physical product or a regulated body like we were. I had to really think differently about it. I had a chocolate business at one point that I also had. That hadn't made me think differently. I had to space out how we were going to more on the cash flow pieces, how much you had to spend on shipping and logistics. We had all these salespeople around the country that we needed to pay. There were moments in my mid-30s as I got to the point where I was ready to start my healthcare company that helped me see that you need to focus on profit and growth, right? So what are those levers with profit and growth? And how much do you want to grow and how much profit do you want to invest in growth? Are you investing in people and technology and systems, in product? What is it that you're investing in? What are those things? And then what's the long-term goodness of having done that? So it was during those years, those sort of shifts started to come alive. I think the other thing is I learned from the companies that I was advising. Every time you get into a company, you learn something. You learn lots of things. You see different business models. You see how people are using their talents differently and playing different roles, different skills, like, oh, well, that's cool. So I think it was sort of all of that. I was always I still am, I like to capture systems and process, right? So I was building at the little girl stage. I was experimenting in college. But whenever I'm doing something that I ever feel like I might do again, I document it and create a system.
Wow, I love that.
So everything I did with a client, I could do again with another client. I had it organized. And so I've always just been like that. I learned quickly and I learned how to sort of systematize and operationalize what I was learning. And it just was sort of a transition. And the other thing is my healthcare company grew really fast, but we had huge costs, right? So we weren't at break even until about 24 months in. Then we got to break even and COVID hit and we couldn't grow more. So we decided to merge with another platform. So then we actually did a merger. And the moment we did that, we were enormously profitable. So It was like overnight kind of thing. It wasn't even like we were a little profitable. We were like, we were breaking even. And then the next day we were profiting 7 figures.
What was it like on a psychological and emotional level to say, okay, we're going to start this capital intensive business and I'm going to need to pull money out of something that I have saved and worked hard for and busted my ass for, and I'm going to take the deep breath. Oh my God, I'm pulling it out and I'm going to do this thing with it and I have no idea what's going to happen. Okay, what was that like? Let's start there. What was it like?
It was excruciating. It's awful. It makes you sick to your stomach. I wanted to throw up, but I did it, right? And it's one of those things where you started and you're like, all right, I'll just write this check for $100,000 and get this going. And maybe I'll need another 100 down the road. But then it turns into a lot more than that, My operations are running at $120,000 a month and I got to make sure everything works. It's excruciating. I was at a meeting with a private equity group a couple years ago when we were getting ready to sell my company. I was talking about our journey with Illume. After we got our license, it took us about 18 months to get our license so we could get started and actually bill. During those 18 months, we had to have the whole company operating. I had to employ people. I had to have an electronic medical record system going. I had to have an office space. Everything had to function. I had to have nurses on staff and it was expensive. I got my certification, I got all my things, and we started providing services and being able to bill. And we already had 20 patients because we were supposed to demonstrate to the Department of Public Health that we could do it. So I just kept them all on because I couldn't not have these people like, sorry, because I don't need you anymore. I'm sending you away. I couldn't do that. So we kept putting in money and making it work. And then we grew. And we got to this moment where we'd grown over the 18 months. We grew from 0 to 6.5 million in revenue, but it still wasn't enough. So I didn't think it was a good thing. So I'm standing in a room with this private equity guy, and he said, wait a minute, you grew a company in 18 months, $6.5 million? And I said, well, yeah, but it wasn't enough.
You didn't see the ulcer and the fact that I didn't sleep for 18 months.
And I needed it to be 8 million. It wasn't enough.
Wow.
Now I watch pitches, right, for founders, and you see these layouts of what the projections are and the forecast, and it's a pipe dream most of the time, right? You don't know what's going to happen. And there are situations where things go pretty well, but it really is a journey, right? Where you start and you invest and know that you're going to go forward and make it work. And then when you run out of money, you get more, and you keep doing it until you get there. And that's the mindset I think you have to have. You have to be efficient and smart, because you'll run out of money if you don't. But it takes that mindset. I don't think if you knew what you were going to have to raise at the very beginning, you'd ever start.
So tell me a little bit, obviously it's like this financial journey of then merging the company. And then certainly it's like, I don't think anyone ever talks about the leaving a company once you've exited it. I don't think there's ever any sort of compensation that fully gives your life justice when it comes to the feelings and all the things you went through. But as you sort of were approaching this exit and it seemed, okay, there's now going to be this next step and you're going to get to put a beautiful bow on something that has been both the greatest pleasure and pain of being able to do this. How did you start to think about life at that point? Was it, I'm going to go and start this new business and apply myself to this calling? Was it, okay, guys, I'm ready for a vacation and let's go spend some money and go on a great trip? How did you start to reconcile yourself in this post-merger, post-exit space?
Yeah. So the merger happened in 21, and that was incredibly hard. I mentioned before it was financially very successful, but emotionally it was really hard. And that's actually when I started writing A Force for Good, because it was my healing. It was my little place that I could go to. And it was like, this was my prayer to how I will do it again in the future. This is how I believe companies can be led and that companies can be for good. And this is why I'm going to write this book, because it will heal me while I'm going through this thing that's really hard. What happened is then the book was ready at the same time the company was ready to be sold, and we were finally ready to close on a deal. We had 3 different suitors. We ended up with one that we wanted. It took a year to close. The merger was hard. The diligence was hard. I turned 50 at the same time. And so I wanted those things done. And then I'm still sort of stumbling through it, I guess is what I'm saying, because I closed on the business in October. The book was ready, so I launched it. And now I've got this new engine going and I am enjoying it. And I'm also a little should I have stopped and
have a vacation?
I'm like, what did I do? Right? I am really happy and I'm in a really good place. I'm grateful. I have 2 wonderful daughters. I have a husband who adores me and supports me. We recently moved back to New York City for our older daughter so we can get her better care here. I feel like I'm in the right place. I feel like I'm not that little girl anymore who's worried. I'm not scared about things anymore. I feel like I'm not with the tiger on my back. I love now being able to take what I've learned and give it back. And I also love the idea of investing in other women, learning about investing in multifamily properties, going into business with my housekeeper. It's like how we can continue to build our own wealth and our own security together with the people around us. That's what makes me happy.
I love that. Last year when John and I sat down to think about the work we were doing, we had this really clear just download around all those who we work with and who work with us who all have a profound sense of prosperity together. That is the vision. It's like we do this together.
Yeah, exactly. And you can be in partnership if you have that in your life too. Like, what a blessing. Yeah. Do it with other women. So being at your event here in New York, and I know you've done your Wealth Catalyst event in a couple places, being able to build prosperity and feel that prosperity, have permission to experience prosperity is also a real reclaiming with other women, right?
Yes. Oh, I love this. This is such a fabulous conversation. So Coco, obviously your entire life has been just this incredible legacy of risk, so much self-learning and evolution. And we are just going to be living so much longer today than ever. And so I have no doubt that there will be a young 102-year-old Coco Sellman who's looking back on her incredible life. My love, what does that body of work, how do you sort of reflect on that? And what is the impact that you're hoping to be able to leave on this planet?
I've done a fair amount of work with Lynn Twist. And one of my favorite people is Carolyn Buckluse, who wrote a book called The Decade Game. And I stand for a world where wise women everywhere elevate humanity and bring us all into a higher sense of good. Yeah. And that is what I stand for, where women use their wisdom and their graciousness and their prosperity, make our whole world better, because it's what we do naturally. That's what my vision is. That I believe when women have power, when women have education, when women have money, good things happen.
Amen, sister. That is a very true statement. Obviously, we talked a lot today about negotiating salaries and investing your money. Some of these things are obviously more serious when it comes to money, but money is also this fantastic tool for fun, for joy. My gosh, there are so many great things we can do with it. And so while you might say one of my favorite things to do is invest in businesses, I'm going to ask you to take a break from that and say, girlfriend, what do you like to spend your money on? What are some things that are bringing you joy?
I just bought an incredible New York City apartment. It is pretty spectacular. And I love creating space for my family. I love creating space where we can all be comfortable and love together. I host events here. I bring women into our home. I love it. I also love wonderful food. I spend a lot of money on food. Dining experiences are the very forefront of what I love to do. And of course, I love to travel. I love experiencing cultures and people that teach me who I am. I love to stay in places, some that are small and quaint and feel like I'm living there, and some that are opulent and extraordinary and have the thousands count sheets, Egyptian cotton that you just know, and like all those things. So I love those pleasures. I love finding specific things. I'm a champagne person. So the perfect bottle of champagne. I am always tasting champagne. I love chocolate covered caramel, dark chocolate. I always sample it. There are things that I love.
I can't wait for you to post your next vacation with me and let's sample the delicious wonders of the world.
I enjoy myself too. I put my money to fun work too.
Oh, I love that, Coco. And then my final question is, our community really stands right lock in step with every woman on the show and every woman who's raising her torch to see the change and be the change she wants to see in the world. Anything, big or small, what are you calling in right now? What can we do for you? How can we evangelize this world?
I am calling in women founders that are ready to build and grow. I'm really calling in right now other women who really want to help founders scale and grow. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for partnership with others who want to be on the ground working with founders so we can build a bigger infrastructure and community to help them grow.
What a wonderful request. Coco, thank you so much for your spirit, your time, your energy today, your wisdom, your dedication to being and seeing a force for good in this world. I am grateful to have you.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.